in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my stats as an applicant. Boring, I know, but most people are kind of looking for someone to compare to, so I figured I could be that person. So this video goes along with my video on my full application process. I will link it in the card above if I can figure out how to do that. And in that video, I talk about how Megan and Ciera, who applied to PT school and made a video about their journey, were my inspiration, and they also made a application stats video to go along with their video, and so that's where I got the idea. So I will link their video in the description. Okay. Before I start, you may notice that some of the aspects are above average, some are below average, and that's going to be pretty typical for everyone. You can't be amazing in every category, but I just want you to keep in mind to try not to so harshly compare yourself against other people. We all have our different strengths and weaknesses, and as many people will remind you, everyone's application looks different. I will also be linking Student Doctor Network down below. In their Rehabilitation Sciences section, there are OTD forums. Now, even though it's labeled OTD, there are master's and doctorate students in there, but a lot of people share their stats. They share when they get accepted and when they get interview invites, so it's a good way to kind of keep up to date on how you stack up and whether or not, basically where schools are in the process. I will say Student Doctor Network is known for being a bit cutthroat and bad for mental health, so take that with a grain of salt. I've looked a few times, but it definitely does make you feel kind of inferior, because keep in mind most people don't post things unless they do extraordinarily well. Alright, so the first section is my GPA. At the time of my application, my total GPA was a 3.87. My natural sciences GPA was a 3.68, and my social sciences GPA was a 4.0. So they broke my GPA down into a bunch of different sections. There were trends, your freshman versus sophomore, so on and so forth, different subjects, but I felt like those were probably the most important areas to hit on. I did take the GRE. My verbal score was a 159, which was, at the time of that test, in the 82nd percentile. My quantitative score was a 154, which was in the 51st percentile, making my combined score a 313. Most people say you want to be above 300. And then my analytical writing was a 4.5, which was in the 80th percentile. I could make a video on how I studied for that, but I don't know if it's really necessary. There are many other videos out there, even though they're not OT specific, but I didn't even though I put my score on my resume and in my application, I didn't even need it because most schools ended up waiving that requirement for the pandemic anyway. My major was health science, but as most people will tell you, it doesn't matter what your major is. Observation hours, everyone's favorite. So I completed observation hours during a pandemic. So my numbers are lower than what some people would have had in the past, but I don't know if this is the new normal, so I figured I'd just share mine. I had 10 hours in early intervention, 12 in a skilled nursing facility, 17 in the ICU and cardiac ICU, 14 in a nursery, so not a NICU, but like in a they're sick babies. So not enough for a NICU level, but people going through, or babies going through drug withdrawals, preemies, that sort of thing. And so that was 53 total hours. I do think it's important that you know before you start shadowing that every experience has to be over 10 hours, so 10 or more. And then I also had another experience, which I put under clinical experience / internship because it wasn't with an OTR, it was with a CODA. But I did shadow a CODA in the school setting for 50 hours. So if a school looked at that as, shadowing, it would end up being about 103 hours total. I know it depends on what school you apply to. Most schools in rural areas understand that there aren't enough OTs for everyone to shadow for 300 hours or whatever. So I did see some schools that would accept your hours if it was with a CODA as observation hours. Some schools won't, but I still thought it was a great experience. My volunteer hours. So I had 158 volunteer hours. I volunteered with 6 places, but 96 of my hours were with one place. So I had been worried for a lot of my application that I was jumping around too much with my volunteering. I don't know if they looked down on that or not, but I would volunteer for 2 hours with Special Olympics and then 4 hours with a literature center here, there, and everywhere because I had trouble finding a volunteer position that I could actually hold for many hours. But take that with a grain of salt. Healthcare experience. I worked starting in my freshman year of university as a home health aide. So that was geriatrics. And my eye itches. So I worked as a home health aide, but I had my CNA, so it counts as CNA work. And then in my junior year, I made the switch to working as a direct support professional, so helping people with intellectual disabilities live independently. And I also got my CMT certification during that time, so being a med tech. And that totaled to 1,368 hours of healthcare experience. For extracurricular experience, I had like a one-off event. It could have been labeled as volunteering, but it didn't quite meet that, so I just put it in extracurricular experience, but it was only like 8 hours. And then I had one club, and that totaled up to 228 hours. My leadership experience, I was the vice president of our pre-professional medical society, which is basically our healthcare club. And I also, in only my freshman year, so I was kind of nervous about putting it on there, but I ended up deciding to put it on there. I was on the committee to organize our university's Relay for Life. So that totaled up to 84 hours of leadership experience. There are so many categories. For teaching experience, I was a tutor, and I also was a orientation leader for some of our freshmen, which is a class at my university. So that totaled up to 368 hours of teaching experience. I had one publication that I just got because I just happened to be in a genetics course when they did this experiment that was part of this whole web, and so all of the students who were involved could be part of the publication. But I don't think that's something I would worry about too much. I doubt very many people have a publication. I was a co-author on the publication. Uh, and then awards, I only had one, and this was like, it was a very loose award. So it was the Caring Bobcat Award from my school. But I wouldn't be surprised if most people don't have awards, because that's not something they really give out that many of in college, at least where I'm at. My personal statement was 500 words, so not even a page, but the reason why was because one of the schools I was applying to had a limit of 500 words. You couldn't go over that, they wouldn't read anything over that, and I was only going to write one personal statement. So that was stressful. But it ended up working out. I was stressed that the other schools would look down on how short it was. But I don't know. I got in, so. And then, just so you know, the prompt for this year, and from what I can tell for every year for a personal statement, is explain why you selected occupational therapy as a career and how an occupational therapy degree relates to your immediate and long-term goals. Describe how your personal, educational, and professional background will help you to achieve your goals. I'm hoping to at some point make a video about my personal statement, maybe even reading it. I'm not sure. I have to figure out kind of the, not legality, but like, I don't know if that'll backfire, so I have to kind of think it through a little more. But hopefully I'll be making a video about that later. So that was all of my stats per se. You should definitely check out Megan and Ciera's video, even though it's for physical therapy school. I think it's helpful. And I think that's everything. I know it's a lot, but I operated by the mindset, basically one small step at a time. There's this saying, my boyfriend looks at me crazy when I say it, because he swears no one else ever says this, and he's never heard it before. So I don't know where it comes from, but there's this question, and it's, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time, and that is to say that you're looking at this big end goal, eating the whole elephant, this whole getting all these perfect stats and getting into grad school. That is a huge long-term goal. And if you look at it as that big picture, you're going to be really overwhelmed and probably not do anything. Because you can't do that in one sitting, so how are you going to do it at all? But if you think about it as, okay, that's my end goal, but I have 4 years to do this, or however many years you have. I did it in 3.5. But yeah, I have 4 years. So let's look at my first year. We can just tackle the hooves, the legs, I don't know, so I can start shadowing for a few hours during the summer. I can work on getting a job in healthcare, so on and so forth. So I wish you the best of luck, as always.